Our third talk is Evangelizing the Social Media Mindset. And what this is really, we've talked about how social media changes our mind, and now we want to talk about how to evangelize that mindset. And this isn't so much online, but throughout life. We're going to talk about specifically online in talk number 4, but in talk number 3, it's going to be about the mindset. So just an introduction. The gospel should reach our whole life, and today, 11% of the average American Catholic day is social media. So it isn't something just a fad, something that's passing. It's something that's a reality, something that's a big part of their day. And it isn't just that it's 11% of their day. It's a part of their day that has more influence on their thoughts because it's a part of their discussion with friends. They're sharing what they believe is important in their day. And if we go back to Gaudium et Spes from the Second Vatican Council, it gives us a little indication of this, and it says, thus, in a language intelligible to each generation, she, the church, can respond to the perennial questions which men ask about the present life and the life to come, and about the relationship of one to the other. That's for number 4. And so we see that with the incarnation, Jesus makes it possible to evangelize all of human life. Other than intrinsically evil things, like you can't make wholesale genocide salvific, but every other aspect that's either neutral or good, you can. For instance, the guy who made this table that I'm sitting in front of, he could have sanctified that and made that holy in how he made that table. I don't know if he did. I don't know who made this table. I have no idea. I have no idea if it was made by a machine, actually. But and the guy who designed the machine, at least, could have been that way. But anyways, there's an important quote from Daniela Zuspin-Jerome, who says, communication comes from the movement at the very heart of the Trinity. And so there is a Trinitarian incarnational aspect to this. It isn't just kind of pragmatic, but it's really a spiritual reality we have to deal with. So now a little outline. There's going to be 4 main points in this talk. First, meat not gravy. Content is king on social media. Second, Tom Sawyer. Get others involved. I'll tell you why Tom Sawyer if you don't realize that right away. And then the release, stress-free zone as a commercial-free zone, and then resonance. What we mean by viral or shareable, boastable moments, and social play, which are kind of concepts that are important both what we post online and what we do offline. So moving on to the meat, not the gravy. The winners in the new socioeconomic world, as Eric Qualman talks about it, he talks about the socioeconomic world because he's talking about businesses. But I think in the same way, we're talking about religion and trying to reach people. It's the principles in that sense are very similar. But it's those who produce great products and services, not those who simply rely on great messaging. It's no longer that you have the super flashy commercial that sells you. It's that you have the 500 5-star reviews on Amazon for your product sells it better to many people today than having a flashy commercial in the Super Bowl. And that, to get 500 5-star reviews on Amazon, you have to have a quality product. You can fake a few, but you can't fake 500 5-star reviews and a 4.9 average rating on Amazon. So today, there's no artificial wall between the consumer and the product, between the sheep and the shepherd. Back in the day, it's kind of like distant. But today, if I have an issue with something, there's an author who wrote a book recently, Catholic author, and I sent him a message directly just saying, hey, can you send me a copy to review? And he just wrote back and said, hey, yeah, the publisher will do it. Can you give me your address and who you're writing the review for? And then he did it with the publisher. Whereas in the past, there wouldn't be that intermediary, the publisher. I would have never asked, like 30 years ago, nobody would ever ask the person directly, unless they were a good friend. This guy's not super direct good friend. I don't know him personally. Whereas today, because there's that lack of barrier, it's a much more direct contact. And so it's also be real. That means we need to pray and study first so we're real with Jesus and we have that attractiveness of Jesus to present. If we have that attractiveness, person to person or person to church relationships will develop. Because you develop that relationship between you and the church, or between you and somebody who's more Catholic, you being in a general sense here somebody who's just out there, that will bring them along to be evangelized. Now, Meredith Gold talks about this content is king concept. She says, quality content will enhance your audience's knowledge, deepen their understanding, strengthen their faith, stimulate conversation, and build community. Those are the types of realities we want to happen from what we're doing on social media. And in a sense, what we're doing off social media as well. And what we have here is, unfortunately, at the same time, you have a lot of this superficial clickbait. You've all seen it in your Facebook feed. 20 times somebody was incredibly stupid. Click here, and it's just basically clicking there so you get the ads on that site and things. And people realize that that's not all. They need somewhere to ground themselves. And Jesus needs to reach those existential needs, not just be the clickbait. And I think there is a place for lack of a better term, Catholic clickbait, in the sense of, hey, you won't believe what this amazing story of this saint or something. Sure, do that, but don't have just that. They need a place to reflect, a place not to just get bombarded with information, a place in a sense offline, because online, especially social media, you're constantly bombarded. I have 2,000 friends on Facebook, and if I tried to read everything they post, I'd be reading all day. Same thing with Twitter, even more. I follow like a few thousand people, 40,000 people follow me. And there's an interesting thing that Frank Mercadante, an expert in youth ministry, talked about evangelizing today's youth. And he talked about relaxation and meditation. That our church's contemplative prayer tradition may be the best remedy for a busy, stressed out teen. And along the same line, Sherry Waddell in Forming Intentional Disciples mentioned adoration as a similar thing, as something that evangelizes people in the new reality. Those two, Mercadante and Sherry Waddell, didn't mention explicitly the social media aspect of it, but they mentioned the modern mind, which I think is highly formed by social media. Now, the Tom Sawyer approach. Now, Tom Sawyer, if you remember the story, he had to paint a fence. And instead of just going grumpily, here's how bored, he made it look like it was the most fun thing to do. And he started getting people, like the other kids in town, to pay him to be able to do it. And he was getting paid both by the person finishing it and by the people who were painting the fence. And it is that sense of getting people involved in the church, not just leaving it all for the bishops and priests to do. It's very interesting that if you look at the brand content, about 25% of the content for top brands, we're talking, like Adidas, Coca-Cola, things like that, are user-generated. It's not something the company produced, 25% of the top search results. And the faith is even less centralized and branded. It should be even more that's not just produced by the institutional church, by bishops, by the official parish website and things like that. It should be so-and-so's personal faith journey, or the beautiful statues I've seen at churches I've visited, or whatever those are. I mean, different people have different interests, different talents in that regard. And there are some realities of this. There's a few examples. Catholic Answer Forums has like 11,000 posts, and only about 40,000, so like 1 in 285 is an Ask an Apologist post. And the Ask an Apologist is more like an official, formal thing that one of the official Catholic Answers apologists answers the person who posts. Whereas the other posts are like, hey, what do you think of this news story? Or, I'm thinking about a vocation here and here. What do people have any advice? So they're really getting the crowd to respond, a crowdsourcing type thing. r/Catholicism on Reddit. Now, just be warned, Reddit, you have to be very careful. r/Catholic is not a good place, but r/Catholicism has about 6,000 readers, and there are about 361 posts a week. So that's quite a bit of activity. And there's Facebook pages Catholic Facebook pages with millions of likes. I have an example here with one over 1 million likes. There's others with huge followings too, that are just developed by people who really have that devotion. Now, we need active laity both online and offline. And moving to this, if we think about it offline, maybe there's a more collaborative parish model. Because the default parish model is the priest gives a homily to the people. Priest to people. And you would think, okay, well, it's like, well, maybe we'll do a little bit of collaboration. It'll be the priest, and he'll have like some assistants who are employed, some who are volunteers, and then to the rest of the parishioners. But really, the ultimate for the Tom Sawyer approach is to get people to have these initiatives where it's not just these particular people, but it's like Joe in Pew 5 talks to the 4 or 5 guys who are around him and says, hey, why don't we read the Bible? And why don't we go through Luke? And I saw this great commentary by this great Catholic author. Why don't we do it a chapter a week, and we'll go through it together? What it is we want to promote those initiatives, whatever they are. Whether they're prayer, whether they're study, whether they're charity, whether they're praise and worship. I remember I was visiting one place, and a bunch of the parishioners got together once a week, and they had like a dinner, But then they would sing praise and worship songs for like 15 minutes from a book together. And that's a beautiful thing to see in a parish, because it's totally their initiative. It wasn't an official parish event, but they all went to the same parish. They were all strengthening their faith by singing these praise and worship songs. I mean, I wouldn't sing them because my voice would be like, oh my goodness, what's wrong with my ears when I try and sing? But that's because God has not given me that talent. He's given me other talents. And a lot of times we need to trust professionals with their professional skills. So often in the church we have, oh, the priest should know everything. And honestly, most parishes have somebody who knows a whole lot more about fixing the roof than the priest does. It would be very rare that the parish not know that. And most parishes have somebody who knows a whole lot more about building a website than, the parish secretary. So trust those people with their professional skills. Get them interested in that, because usually people who have such professional skills are interested to share if they're given the opportunity. For instance, my brother-in-law runs websites and servers for a university up in Canada, and one of the apostolates for all of Canada, they saw, oh, this guy's great, and so now he was just finishing building a website for what's called Familia in Canada. And how did that happen? That happened that one of the guys who ran Familia ran into him and realized he had those skills and said, hey, can you do this? And so he did it. I mean, they paid him a little bit, but he could have probably made more money had he taken more for-profit jobs of building websites on the side in addition to his main job at the university. So anyway, but it's also a multilateral conversation, because it's not just that unilateral, one to another or one to many, but it's a multilateral is that everyone is talking to everyone else. For example, if someone in your parish shares, if you have, let's say, priest homilies recorded, put online every week. If somebody in your parish shares on Facebook, it's worth more to you than an ad that you did yourself. Why? Because all those people's friends are realizing this person thinks this homily is valuable enough to tell us all about it. And that's way more valuable than St. Mike's wants you to hear Father's homily this Sunday. Even if you pay like a few bucks to show up on people's Facebook feeds in your neighborhood or something. It's not the same kind of force. And if we're trusting one to evangelize, we really need to help them. We need to provide continuing ed for Catholics. I'm not 100% sure how. This is not my area of expertise. And we need to provide things like spiritual direction, retreats, all these things for them to grow spiritually. Because if these Catholics are going to evangelize, they're going to need that kind of support from the rest of us in the church. And some of these people who are in the church will realize, instead of really reaching out, they're actually more called to do something like this, like provide that continuing education, provide that spiritual support. It can also be a release for social media stress. Social media provides a lot of stress, and the church can provide that kind of release from that stress. A lot of social media requires you're always in your best behavior. You can't post, oh, life sucks, it's like kind of like people with you, Or it's very rare that you'll see somebody post their hair not combed, not combed right on social media. If they're going to post a picture of themselves, it's going to be all set right. And people have games that let their guard down a little bit with their Candy Crush or Farmville or things like that. But we have opportunities like confession where people can truly let their guard down, where you could really open up yourself completely to the priest, to God, and say, look, I'm not perfect. My hair is a mess. My kids, I show them always off as perfect, but sometimes I want to kill them, Father. And there's other spiritual practices that also allow you to open up. And social media should supplement face-to-face, not replace it. And I think sometimes there's kind of a balance there, because there is an advantage in social media that you can reach all these people, but there is things that are lacking that you get in face-to-face. I don't have on social media, I don't have all your facial expressions, all the intonation in your voice. And part of face-to-face is that the sacraments have matter, not just form. They require personal presence. The church has repeatedly said you can't do confession over the phone, over Skype, or anything like that. I mean, I get this question online like every week or every month. Can you hear my confession online? No. Can you hear my confession online? No. Over and over again. It's like one of the most common ones. I almost wanted to have like a copy and paste reply to it, but that requires a presence. Even a mass, semi-broadcast where you have a mass, like the Pope Mass and 1 million people there. It's a personal presence. It's not you're there, you're seeing it, you're live, you're present with all these other people. Even if you're watching the Pope on the TV screen because he's 300, 500 meters away, so you can't really see his face well. you're still there present. There's still something about the face-to-face, about the here and now and corporeal bodily reality that's there. That's lost in social media. And the sacraments is a way to bring that back, because the sacraments always require that physical, personal presence. Social media can also provide a commercial-free zone, kind of like a stress-free zone, but we think of how today there are so many commercials. You go on social media and it's like ad all the time. And even today, even in our society, people's clothes are often ads. It's like this giant Nike symbol, or like, their favorite team symbol. Not that that's bad. I mean, if you like, this team and you have a giant symbol on your shirt, it's not bad, but it's kind of an advertisement. We almost get to the Ferengi motto. I don't know if you know the Ferengis from Star Trek, but the Ferengis are the complete prophet. And their motto is, I profit, therefore I am. So they're complete, like, really extreme capitalists. And where we introduce the person to the consumer. You hear this kind of mentality on the news when you listen to the economic reports. It's the person is consumer, the person is employee. The person doesn't have a reality as a person, just a person, but they are what they do. And we are more than what we do. We are something created. We are the image and likeness of God. We are children of God. Even back in 1994, there were things about too many ads online. And so it's only gotten worse. Let's go on to Benedict XVI. Benedict XVI said, the significance and effectiveness of the various forms of expression appear to be determined more by their popularity than by their intrinsic importance and value. And that's something that is very important, that we have to get back to that intrinsic value to have that commercial-free zone. And the church gives us a sense of intrinsic value, not just value for what we do. So we need a place to value people for who they are, and not just as a means. Morally, man could never be a means. Yet commercialism, it puts him as a means, as a consumer, as an employee. We need to put the value in each person, not just on numbers. And we have to think about, do we want the Mass, do we want other parish events to be commercialized? And how commercialized? And at what point do we actually damage that kind of commercial-free, stress-free zone by making it overly commercialized? How much of reading from the bulletin events is really helpful? Obviously, you want to promote events at the parish. And how many of those ads in the bulletin tend towards a commercialist mentality? It's not necessarily to say that they're bad. I mean, my parents put ads on their parish bulletin for their free-range beef, which they sell. But the question is, are those good for the parish, or are those taken away? And I'm not sure. There's different limits, different situations, different places. And is each person greeted as a person, or just passed down the line? Especially the big parishes, it can become depersonalized, where it's just kind of like, hello, 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 and it's each person. Instead of it being, hello, John, hello, Jane. Now, moving beyond this commercial-free, stress-free zone, we have to think about, the next few slides are going to be about the question of how what we produce will be seen on social media. And not just what we produce online, but what we produce offline. One of the things about social media is that it makes attention span shorter. So you really have to be cognizant of this when you write a homily. So your homily should be, in a way, tweetable. Not that you're definitely going to tweet your homily. I mean, I personally do that a lot of times. But that your concept you want the person to remember from the homily is short enough to be in a tweet. It isn't that you want somebody to remember some huge, immense concept in a homily. That's not. Homilies are more for reinforcing basic concepts than for teaching advanced theology. So what you want somebody to get from it should be something that's very short, 2 lines, not something that's huge. And that is for the whole society, but it also allows it to be viral or shareable, because then people can share it on Twitter, on Facebook, because, hey, that's the reflection they have on today's gospel. It's maybe they got it from the parish priest, but it's something that can be shared because it's short and pithy. And we need to speak of people's emotions and experience. Today, people trust their experience, their emotions over philosophy. Very often, we talk about the defenses of the church. We talk about apologetics. We're talking about philosophy, theology. Reading, how do you analyze this verse of scripture? Does this verse of scripture, and that verse of scripture and the other one? But one of the things we realize in today's culture is their own experiences have a lot of times more value than all those kind of more abstract arguments. Now, understanding the reality of this is to think about how these kind of shareable, viral events happen. Adidas and EA, the people who make sports video games, have found that 70% of the return on investment, 70% of the value in an ad that they do online comes from resharing, not from people looking at it on the EA page or the Adidas page, but from the new Adidas sneaker coming out and Joe Smith posting on his page and saying, his own account and saying, hey buddy, do you think I should buy these new Adidas sneakers? Because then it's all of a sudden, it's not only that Adidas is posting, but your friend is actually thinking of buying these Adidas sneakers. And so the idea is, how can what I say be shared and reshared on social media? Both what I say offline and what I post online. And the idea is that people rely on their friends' recommendations. If you look at it for purchases, like what kind of backpack should I get my kid for school or something, people rely heavily on their friends' recommendations. About 90% do. I don't have an exact percentage for religion. I couldn't really find a study that was explicitly about that, but I think it's got to be like 90% plus, because the biggest way to evangelize is to reach your friends. For the word of mouth goes around the world undiluted super fast. For instance, last year at the March for Life, one of the top signs I shared was of a mom saying, my unplanned pregnancy is now a freshman at Stanford, and it showed a picture of him in his Stanford University basketball jersey and things. And a day or two later, the Stanford University basketball coach told this guy, hey, did you see that there was this post about you on social media from your mom with this sign? So it's like, I have no idea who the Stanford basketball coach is. I couldn't even name him today. But the fact that it got from my account around back to the Stanford basketball team and coach to tell the player, who didn't even realize that his mom had done a sign about him at the March for Life. And so he found out via this social media, really before he found out from his mom, that his mom made a sign about him at the March for Life. And that just shows you how fast and how undiluted it goes across the world. And because before it would all be mediated. Some important person, president or some celebrity, would say something, and then people wouldn't be able to see it directly. They'd see the summary presented by the local newspaper the next morning. Whereas today, the president says X, and people are like, oh, I got to go to cspan.org and double check, make sure that that's exactly what he said. And Trump especially, I mean, he just tweets it out, so it's like, like right there. Whether you like Trump or not, I mean, that's not the point. The point is how it's undiluted, and it's exactly what he posted is transmitted to everybody instead of kind of mediated like it would have been with a more newspaper, local news thing of 20 years ago. A lot of social media involves kind of a certain amount of boasting or bravado, in the sense of like, hey, I'm great. And it's not always directly, hey, I'm great, but it's like enjoying the slopes here on a Tuesday, and it's like, wow, I get to go skiing on Tuesday, and it's like, it's not directly saying it, but it's kind of like showing off. It's kind of boasting in a way. And it's not necessarily bad. I mean, some of this things is very interesting. That one of the things they found is that millennials today in their 20s are giving more per person, even after inflation, than people 20, 30 years ago in their 20s were giving. And one of the biggest ways they see the increase is that in these type of posts where it's like, you give $10 to the Red Cross, and then it gives you like a link to share on Facebook. Hey, I gave $10 to the Red Cross. And so we want people to boast about the good things they do. If they're on a mission trip, they want to have pictures, and they want to be able to go back and say, look, it was great, and I did this and that, and it was amazing. We really helped out these people. Or they do a retreat, or they go to Sunday Mass. There should be things that they can boast. They can say, hey, this was great. And we also need to avoid kind of the opposite, complainable moments where people complain online, like, I had to sit this boring 20-minute homily today, # switching church. That's the kind of thing we want to avoid, because what happens today is that the transmission is so much greater. If somebody has a positive experience, like with a brand or something, right now people on social media will share with an average of 42 people. Those off social media will share about 10. So what you get is that all of a sudden, that little experience, that person gets shared much wider. Instead of just being that person's experience shared with their group of friends, it's shared with a much wider audience. Whether it's that your barista at Starbucks really butchered your name, spelling your name, or whether it's the great customer service you got at somewhere where you had to return something because your kid broke it the day after you bought it, even though it was like totally your kid's fault and not the company's fault for what they sold you. That gets spread a lot wider. And it's the same thing with religion. Obviously, most of these studies are done with commercial enterprises for commercial ends to try and make money. But the same basic principles apply to faith, to religion. So here we go. Social play is the ability to have something resonate on social media. And we're going to have 2 slides in this, and it's going to have some examples. So nothing is so far from social media it can't appear there. And so here's an example of Santa and the deaf girl. I don't know if any of you have seen this before, but this is a video that's been shared. I think it's been viewed, like 10 million times on YouTube. And it's really a pretty amazing video here of this deaf girl going to Santa. And it's really it's kind of inspiring.
Oh, you're so cute. What do you want for Christmas? What do you want?
She's off again.
Sorry, she can't talk very well for a speech. She can't talk.
What sign are you?
Yeah, she does animals and things like that, but she's getting there.
Another example of social play is to be proactive. Create a positive post about what will be in social play. For example, here's 2 things that I do. I manage part of the Raymond Christie site. I'm not the only person who manages their social media, but I'm one of the people. And one of the things we do is every Wednesday that we share a quote of Pope Francis Wednesday on Ins with a picture, usually of Pope Francis, sometimes of something about what he's talking about. So you can see here was like a week or 2 ago, the gospel sheds the light of the mystery on Christ on the scripture readings. The homily draws more deeply into the mystery of the communion of Christ that we celebrate in the Eucharist. And that's a beautiful thing. It's maybe not the most absolutely inspiring quote of Pope Francis ever, but the fact that he said that morning, and it was posted with a nice picture that afternoon, gives somebody something a little more than just, hey, something Pope Francis said, like 3 years ago. It's something he said this morning. And then I'm always looking for creative expressions. Here's one. I had permission from this kid's mom to post this picture. The kid baked a cake that said Raymond Christie. And it's a beautiful expression of that, and people really liked it. A lot of the moms are always like, oh, it's so cute, of all their, the kid and things. It is a way of expressing it. And any other kind of movement, any other kind of group is going to have similar things of people expressing, but it's to be on the lookout for that kind of content that the users are making. Because I didn't make that picture. Her mom took that picture. I just saw it on her mom's Facebook and said, hey, can I share this on the official Facebook of Raymond Christie? And then damage control, if there's anything out there, get yourself out there, distribute it both social media and non-social media accounts. So you have to be very quick on the reply here. I'm not going to give examples here because the examples I know kind of break people's privacy or are not pleasant. So anyway, so we go on to the summary of this talk, Evangelizing Social Media Mindset. Social media affects people's lives, so we need to adjust our evangelism to that mindset. It's content over form, substance over flash. We need to get others involved. Collaborate, not just top down, not just bishop, priest, parishioner, but parishioner to parishioner, parishioner to priest, priest to parishioner to neighboring parish because he put his homily on his website, neighboring parish parishioner to this parish parishioner, all those things. And we need to ask the best behavior, and the church can be that stress-free zone in a way that commercial-free zone where people can feel that freedom. And we need to create content in a way that people can share it easily, whether about themselves or not about themselves, about us, about the church, about Jesus in general. And everything can be shared on social media, so we have to realize no matter what we do, it is able to be shared on social media. So we have to be aware of how things will play out on social media so that in our planning, so that we plan things with that aspect in mind and not forgetting that and then ending up with a very poor showing on social media.